Hi guys, we are going to be reading out of Across the Wide and Lonesome Prairie. We are on the Oregon Trail. I know it doesn't look like the Oregon Trail, but we're going to be learning about the Oregon Trail. So far, our character Hattie, I forgot to tell you, this book is by Kristiana Gregory, and she has the narrator writing a journal, and her name is Hattie Campbell. She's just a little girl on the Oregon Trail, and they started all the way back here in let me make sure my setting is right. Boonsville, I'm sorry. In Boonsville, Missouri. We know that as Missouri today. Boonsville, Missouri. And they hopped on a steamboat and got on the Missouri River and went to Independence. At Independence, they got off with all of their belongings. They bought all of their oxen and their wagon things and all of the supplies that they would need to go on the Oregon Trail. They are over here right now. I'll get a little bit closer. So they have traveled all of this way. They, let me tell you, have had a lot of heartache. They've had death. Even Hattie, she accidentally fed some what she thought was parsnip to some kids as she was making stew, and it ended up that she killed 3 kids. Oh my Lanta. But there's also been some really exciting things, such as a wedding. So at Independence Rock, I think I showed, Independence Rock, they were having a wedding. Now, the wedding is over, and the brother of the bride has decided he wanted Hattie to play a prank on the bride. Okay, the wedding was late afternoon in the cool shadow of Independence Rock. Pepper was beautiful. She was barefoot with a wreath of wildflowers in her hair, and her dress seemed to float in the breeze. Gideon was so shy that when someone yelled, "Kiss the bride!" he blushed redder than a sunburn and just kept holding her hand. Now, we learned that they're 14 years old. Can you imagine being 14 years old and getting married right now? My son is 11. I cannot imagine having him get married right now. There's no way that I would even fathom marriage even being in the question in a few years. Soon enough, there was music and dancing and food of plenty. Wade came up to me smiling, but instead of asking me to dance, he said, "Hattie, want to play a trick on my sister?" He led me to their new wagon. Mrs. Lewis and the ladies had made up, cozy with a bed and curtains for privacy. There was a lantern hanging from one of the hoops inside. Wade opened a sack that he had brung over earlier and began pulling out pots and pans and other trinkets, which he tied with string under the wagons. I brushed at my apron nervously. Darkness had fallen. Soon we saw Gideon holding Pepper's hand and leading her away from the campfire. Wade and I ran into the shadows. When the newlyweds climbed into their wagon, Wade whispered, "Get ready, Hattie." We gave a little whistle, and to my surprise, out of the darkness appeared dozens of men and women, some children too. All waited for about 5 minutes real quiet. Finally, Wade whistled softly. 2 men hurried to the front of the wagon, lifted the tongue, and began running as if they was mules. Noise erupted from the pans clinging underneath. The crowd that had gathered ran alongside, whooping and yelling and banging spoons, making the wildest noise I'd ever heard. We followed the wagon until the men halted at the edge of the prairie, about a mile from camp. The noise stopped. For a moment, we heard the perfect quiet of night, crickets and wind sighing in through the grass. Then Wade began singing a hymn in a beautiful, slow voice. "May our good Lord watch over you always." After the first verse, everyone joined in. Then slowly began walking back to camp where there was still music. Wade caught up to me. In the firelight, I could see his eyes, his green eyes, and he was smiling. That chivalry was some fun, wasn't it, Hattie? Now I was the one to feel shy. Before I could think of something to say, he took my hand and led me past the fiddler to join the other dancers. Another day, about the Sweetwater River. I don't have that on my map. About the Sweetwater River. Tall Joe says it got its name from some trappers who tried to get their mules across during a storm. One of the packs was full of sugar. When its saddle broke, in went 300 pounds of sugar. Oh my gracious, 300 pounds of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. Rocks on either side rise up about 400 feet, forming a narrow river canyon called Devil's Gate. The trail drops into a nothing, so the wagons had to drive on outside about half a mile. It took all day. Some of us climbed to the top of the cliff for a view. It was spectacular, but it made my stomach turn to look over the edge. The river was so far down. Tall Joe told us that a few years ago, a young bride fell to her death doing what we had just done. There is so much heartache on this journey. I cannot imagine you're trying to go thinking that you're going to have a better life. But we've found that newlyweds have died, new moms have died, young babes have died. There's just been a lot of heartache. Man, they must really want to go if they know that they could die. I want you to think about what is something that you have wanted so much that you would run the risk of dying for. When my son was little, he got really sick when he was a baby. And we were in the hospital a long time. And I would have done anything to trade places with him. Luckily, he's fine. He's 11, right? But at that point, I thought, I would do anything. Just let me take his place. You know, there's times that we all think about something like that. But man, I don't know if I would, knowing how much heartache and how hard it is, I don't know if I would do the same thing now. That thinking about going on a wagon train and doing all that, that's hard. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Another day, my little brother Ben fell off the wagon seat just before noon as we were pulling to a stop. Remember, Hattie and her family were, the reason that they decided they were going to go west was the year before, swamp fever took over their family, and 4 of her siblings died. 4 of her sisters died. So all that there are left of the children are 3 of them. They have the 2 young brothers and Hattie. So they went west so they could have a new life and a fresh start. The wheels rolled over his left arm so that it hung like a broken stick. Oh my. He cried and cried while Pa set it in a splint. Who has had a broken bone before? Have you had a broken bone before? Put a comment below. What kind of broken bone have you had? And I also want you to tell me, did your mom and dad put it in place? Did they fix it? Did they put it in a splint? If Keaton and Hadley broke a bone right now, I would not put it in place. Not me. I would be going to the doctor. They didn't have a doctor. They were in the middle of the wilderness. They have no doctor with them. So the only doctor that they would have would be Ma and Pa. I am not well equipped to be able to do that. Ugh, that's scary, isn't that? But I have to say, he is very blessed that he did not get his whole body ran over, because I have heard other stories of kids getting run over and dying. So I thought for sure that he was going to die. I'm so glad he did not. That would be a whole nother heartache. Oh my gracious. This family. I ran among the families to look for brandy or rum or something to help his pain. I knocked at the Kinkler's wagon and leaned in. Mrs. Kinkler sat on a quilt knitting, her husband asleep beside her. When I told her about Benny, she said, "Oh my word, how terribly dreadful," and set down her needles, uncorked a jug, and poured whiskey into a tin cup about 2 inches deep. "Give this to your brother, dear, and he'll feel not a thing." I thanked her and hurried back to Ma, trying not to spill the whiskey. Soon Benny was quiet and Pa rocked him to sleep. I remember Mrs. Kinkler's knitting. Her yarn was the same color blue as Mrs. Anderson's shawl that disappeared. I'm sure we have a thief among us, and I'm worried I'm the only one who knows. I don't want to bother Pepper about it, and Aunt June is so tired. Do you remember why Aunt June is tired? Aunt June is going to have a baby soon. Ma probably won't believe me on account she says we must always respect our elders no matter what. Grandmothers don't steal is probably what she'll say. My cheeks and the back of my hands are peeling from sunburn. I rub it in axle grease, but dust sticks to my skin. It is tiresome to feel dirty all of the time. Do you live on the farm? If you live on the farm, I imagine the axle grease is a lot like the grease that your dad or your grandpa or whoever uses for your tractors. That thick grease, or we may even be able to explain it something like Vaseline. That really thick Vaseline that if you go to the nurse and you say, "I've got chapped lips," that really thick Vaseline that she might put on your lips, but you don't have a Q-tip, right? And it's not really meant for your skin. It's going to smell disgusting. It's like that. But now imagine that you're outside in the wind and the dust and you're putting it all over your body. You're going to feel gritty and dirty all the time. Man, they are having quite the journey. Okay. We're going to keep going just for a little bit because I want to get to the South Pass. Later, 6 oxen died yesterday and 1 mule. After butchering them where they fell, we kept going. They're too heavy to move and there ain't time to bury them. So they like to, they would like try to bury the oxen out of respect, I guess. Now, one thing I want to know, why did those oxen die? And mule. Was there an accident? Are they sick? I don't want to eat a sick animal. Do you want to eat a sick animal? They're going to eat these animals. Was there an accident? Like, okay, if there was an accident, I can see that. I would totally, if I was hungry enough, I would eat an accident animal for sure. But, if they were sick, I don't want to eat a sick animal. And there are 6 of them. Tall Joe made an announcement at supper. We must lighten our loads to make it easier on the tired animals. Oh no. Ma said to me, "The dresser and rocker can go, but I will never part with your sister's things." So she stuck inside the dresser and things of her sisters, like the favorite things that she could remember of them. When we pulled out this morning, there was an odd assortment left in camp. A wash tub, an oval mirror, 2 trunks filled with brand new shoes, a piano, and a birdcage. Someone had put several dozen books onto the shelves of a china hutch, neat and tidy as a library. Maybe folks coming behind will get to enjoy them, but who has time to read? Tall Joe caught Mrs. Kinker picking through the items and said, "Madam, if your oxen drop dead from all the junk you're making them pull, why I ain't watching and waiting for you, or that husband of yours, to find a new team." If you don't remember, Tall Joe and Mrs. Kinker have already had rounds before. The trail seems to be uphill. Today it was our turn to be in front. I thought at last we'll have no dust. But the wind was at our backs, so we walked in the blowing dirt all day long. My skirt pressed behind my legs often tripped me. Jake and I take turns riding in the wagon to help Ma. I don't like it one bit because it is so hot inside, stuffy and cramped, but we must keep Ben still so his arm will heal. Pa said it was a blessing the bone didn't poke through his skin. Ew. Else they might have to amputate his arm on account of infection. Poor Benny. He wants to play and run alongside the oxen, but Ma's too scared. A boy in one of the other wagons, we don't know the family, was riding on their sideboard. No one knows what happened, but somehow he fell and was trampled by the mules behind. There was so much dust that it wasn't until 3 wagons passed did they find him. Oh my gracious. So 3 wagons ran over him and they didn't even know until later. We all stopped for an hour. They buried him in the middle of the road so wolves don't dig at him. We can hear the boy's mother and sisters wailing, even above the noise of the wagons moving. Along the Sweetwater, today, when I saw Pepper in Gideon's little wagon, she waved me over. "Please walk with me, Hattie," she called. I was so happy to be with her as Gideon drives and she walks alongside. They keep smiling at each other. She is more talkative than ever, which makes me feel good. I think she is glad we are friends. The next miles of trail twisted through ravines and sandy slopes. We were nervous to see rattlesnakes everywhere, draped over rocks and coiled in hot sun. Pa said that the West is home to these snakes, so we must just learn to be careful is all. Way ahead in the distance, we can see dust from the Mormons. They are at least 1 day ahead. Mosquitoes are terrible, and now there are also biting flies. My arms are covered with welts that bleed because I can't help scratching. My sleeves have blood stains such that I want to rip away the cloth. They look so soiled. I wish I had many clean dresses instead of this old ragged thing. I yearn to feel pretty again. Funny, but now I do wear my bonnet and Pepper wears hers. I tease her about being an old married lady, but the truth is our faces hurt from sunburn and the skin keeps peeling. The ridges of my nose is so raw it stings. Every night I rub axle grease on it and my lips too, not hardly minding the stink of it anymore. Ew. There was another wedding last night. The bride is also 14 and her new husband about 30 years old. He is a carpenter. The other one whose wife died a few weeks ago before we reached Chimney Rock. So now this girl is a mother of 3 young sons and a newborn daughter. Some other women are helping her care for the baby, and one is nursing it every few hours. I feel sorry for the girl all at once, having to learn how to be a wife and a mother of 4 children. But Ma says things will probably turn out all right because the bride and groom need each other. He was a widower and she was an orphan traveling with an elderly cousin. They'll grow to love one another, Hattie. Okay, so now we're about ready to enter the South Pass. Okay. Tall Joe says we've come to near 900 miles. That means we're almost halfway to Oregon. There are cheers and singing and gunshots. Pa thought crossing the Continental Divide would be treacherous, but the gap here is 12 miles wide and gentle as a cornfield. This slope is so gradual and hardly knew where we were. To the north are the Wind River Mountains covered with snow. There is a carpet of yellow and blue wildflowers spread between boulders and pine trees. So beautiful, it's sunny. But the air is thin and cold, because of the elevation, about 8,000 feet. Women and girls are picking bouquets to hang upside down in our wagons, so they'll keep their color while drying. This way, we'll have flowers during our winter in Oregon. Tall Joe says the nights are so cold in South Pass, we must keep going down the western slope to a campground called Pacific Creek. Okay, we are going to end here for today. Tomorrow we'll start on page 86. And it will be at the end of June at Pacific Creek. I wanted to show you where they are at on the map. So they were at Independence Rock, and now they're at South Pass. They were at Independence Rock, and now they're at South Pass. So they are halfway. They were halfway to the Oregon, on the Oregon Trail. I hope that you have found this informational and that you're learning something about the Oregon Trail as you are reading or listening to this as we go. I just love Dear America books, so if you have not read one, you need to. They're very insightful. Thank you for joining me. I will see you later.